Vrachthul adjusted his ceremonial viewing crown for the third time in as many minutes, the jeweled spikes catching the harsh arena lights. As Supreme Chancellor of the Zorithian Empire, he had witnessed countless gladiatorial matches, but today's event promised something special. Human. An actual, living, breathing human from that backwater planet called Earth. Remind me again why we're not simply vaporizing this creature and moving on with our conquest plans. Rumbled General Kex 9, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he scratched his scaled belly. But the massive reptilian warrior had never been one for entertainment, preferring direct annihilation to what he called theatrical nonsense. Vrachthul's mandibles clicked in amusement. Because, my dear General, the galaxy needs to see what happens when inferior species challenge the might of Zorithia. This little demonstration will save us considerable resources when other worlds witness the futility of resistance. The arena stretched below them like a metallic crater, its walls rising 300 feet on all sides. Hover cameras buzzed around the perimeter, broadcasting to 17 different star systems. The viewing galleries groaned under the weight of spectators from across the Empire. Scarillians with their tentacled faces pressed against the barriers, Nexorian traders placing bets through their translator devices, and even a delegation of stuffy Quillian diplomats who claimed they were only here for cultural observation. The human approaches. Announced commentator Zril Beta, his voice amplifying across the stadium through bioacoustic enhancers. Standing at an unremarkable 5 feet, 6 inches, weighing approximately 130 pounds, I present to you Maya Prescott of Earth. The crowd erupted in laughter. Not cheers, not applause, but genuine, gut-busting laughter. Some Nexorians were slapping their knees with all 4 arms. A group of Scarillians started making what could only be described as mocking squid noises. Maya Prescott entered through the south gate, and honestly, Vrachthul could understand the crowd's reaction. She looked utterly unremarkable. Brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail, wearing what appeared to be basic combat fatigues, and carrying was that an actual primitive projectile weapon? The kind that fired small metal pellets using chemical explosions? By the 7 moons of Zorithia, General Kex 9 wheezed between laughs. They've armed her with a museum piece. What's next? A pointed stick. Now entering from the north gate. Zril Beta continued, his voice dripping with theatrical excitement. Our reigning champion, Gorvak the Bone Crusher. Standing 12 feet tall, weighing 800 pounds of pure muscle, enhanced with Zorithian battle genetics, and wielding plasma cannons that can melt through starship hulls. The arena floor trembled as Gorvak stomped into view. The creature was a walking nightmare of rippling muscle, chitinous armor, and glowing red eyes. His plasma cannons hummed with barely contained energy, each weapon larger than the human's entire torso. Scars crisscrossed his hide like a roadmap of violence, and his tusks had been sharpened to deadly points. The crowd's laughter died instantly, replaced by anticipatory roars. This was what they had come to see. This was entertainment. Maya stood in the center of the arena, looking up at her opponent with what could only be described as mild interest. Not fear, not determination, not even the resigned acceptance that most condemned prisoners displayed. Just interest. Like she was examining a particularly complex mathematical equation. Contestants. Zril Beta's voice boomed. The rules are simple. Fight until one of you cannot continue. No surrender, no mercy, no escape. May the strongest species prevail. Gorvak raised his plasma cannons, the weapons charging with an ominous whine that made several spectators cover their auditory organs. Energy crackled along the barrels, casting dancing shadows across the arena floor. And then Maya did something completely unexpected. She set her weapon down. Not dropped it, not threw it aside in panic, but carefully, deliberately placed her rifle on the ground. Then she raised her empty hands above her head. The arena fell silent. Even the hover cameras seemed to pause their constant buzzing. What is the human doing? Zril Beta's professional composure cracked slightly. This wasn't in the script. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds before the crowd exploded into the loudest laughter Vrak Thul had ever heard. Spectators were falling out of their seats. A Nexorian merchant was laughing so hard he started changing colors. Even the stoic Quillian diplomats were making their species equivalent of chuckles. "She's surrendering," wheezed General Kex 9, tears streaming down his scaly cheeks. "The great human warrior is surrendering before the fight even begins." "Oh, this is priceless. Wait until the other worlds hear about this." Vrak Thul found himself laughing too, though something nagged at the back of his mind. He had studied human military history as part of his conquest preparations. These creatures were known for many things, but cowardice wasn't typically one of them. Gorvak seemed equally confused. His plasma cannons remained charged, but he tilted his massive head like a confused predator. The crowd's laughter grew even louder at his obvious bewilderment. "Kill her," someone shouted from the stands. "End this farce," yelled another. "I want my betting tokens back," screamed a particularly irate Scarillan. But Maya just stood there, hands raised, that same expression of mild interest on her face. She was looking at Gorvak, but not at his weapons, not at his claws or tusks. She was looking at his feet. His feet? Vrak Thul leaned forward in his throne, suddenly alert. Why would she be looking at? Gorvak grows impatient. Announced Driel Beta, trying to regain control of the situation. He approaches the surrendering human. This pathetic display will end momentarily. The champion began moving forward, his massive frame shaking the arena floor with each step. Dust rose from the impact points, and the crowd's laughter began to fade as they anticipated the inevitable conclusion. Maya waited, still as a statue, hands still raised, eyes still focused on those enormous feet. Gorvak was now 20 feet away. His plasma cannons were fully charged, energy dancing along their surfaces like caged lightning. 15 feet. The crowd held its collective breath. 10 feet. Maya's lips curved into the faintest suggestion of a smile. 5 feet. That's when everything went wrong. Or, from Maya's perspective, exactly right. The arena floor, which had been carefully designed to withstand the impact of charging champions and energy weapons, had one small design flaw that no Zorithian engineer had considered. The subsurface support grid, while incredibly strong, relied on a network of interconnected stress points that could be calculated, mapped, and precisely targeted. Maya's surrender had been a performance, but not for the crowd. It had been for Gorvak, drawing him to exactly the right position while she counted his steps, calculated his weight distribution, and waited for the perfect moment. The moment when 800 pounds of bioengineered champion would be standing directly over the arena's primary structural weak point. The explosion, when it came, wasn't from Gorvak's plasma cannons. It was from the 17 small charges Maya had placed throughout the arena's support structure during her processing the night before. Charges that she had built from components smuggled in her boots, her belt buckle, even her hair ties. Each one perfectly positioned, perfectly timed, and completely invisible to Zorithian security scanners that were designed to detect energy weapons, not primitive chemical explosives. The arena floor didn't just crack, it liquefied. A section roughly 50 feet in diameter simply ceased to exist as solid matter, dropping Gorvak into the arena's lower levels with a roar that was part surprise, part rage, and part physics lesson in gravitational acceleration. The crowd's laughter stopped so abruptly it was almost audible. Maya calmly picked up her rifle. "Now," she said, her voice somehow carrying clearly through the sudden silence, "who wants to discuss the terms of Earth's independence?" The hover cameras captured everything. 17 star systems watched in stunned silence as a 130-pound human stood in the center of a partially collapsed gladiatorial arena holding a primitive weapon, while their invincible champion bellowed from somewhere in the sub-basement. General Kex 9's jaw had dropped so far his tongue was hanging out. Commentator Zrel Beta seemed to have forgotten how to speak. And Supreme Chancellor Vrak Thul suddenly understood why the human had been studying those feet so intently. She hadn't been looking at Gorvak. She had been looking at the arena's structural integrity calculations painted right there on the floor in the form of stress fracture patterns. The silence stretched for exactly 14 seconds. Then the real show began. The first alien to move was an Exorian in the third row who stood up so fast he knocked over his betting companion. Then another. Then 10 more. Within seconds, the entire arena was in motion as thousands of spectators scrambled for the exits like someone had just announced free food in the parking lot. Remain calm. Zrel Beta's voice cracked through the speakers, though his own professionalism had clearly taken a vacation. The situation is, the human has please do not panic. Too late for that advice. A group of Scarillians had gotten tangled up in their own tentacles trying to squeeze through a doorway meant for bipedal species. Several Quillian diplomats were pushing each other with what could only be described as extremely undignified haste. Even the hover cameras were retreating, their operators apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor. General Kex 9 finally found his voice. Where did she get what just happened? Vrak Thul was asking himself the same questions, though his political mind was already racing ahead to the implications. 17 star systems had just watched a single human outsmart their greatest champion using nothing but primitive explosives and basic engineering principles. The propaganda value of this event had apparently decided to switch sides mid-broadcast. Sir, a communication technician burst into the viewing box, his scales flushed with panic. We're receiving urgent messages from the fleet commanders. They want to know if they should begin immediate orbital bombardment of Earth. Absolutely not. Vrak Thul snapped. Do you have any idea how that would look? Zorithian Empire destroys planet after single human defeats arena champion. The other species would never stop mocking us. Down in the arena, Maya had begun walking in a slow circle around the gaping hole where Gorvak had disappeared. She wasn't gloating or celebrating. If anything, she looked slightly bored, like someone waiting for a delayed transport. Human. Zrel Beta's voice boomed across the rapidly emptying stadium. Explain your treachery. Maya looked up at the commentator's booth and shrugged. Treachery? I used the resources available to me within the stated rules. You said fight until one of you cannot continue. Well, your champion is currently continuing his fight with gravity approximately 40 feet below us. I'd say gravity is winning. From somewhere deep beneath the arena floor came a muffled roar of rage and the sound of plasma cannons firing wildly. Apparently, Gorvak was very much alive and extremely unhappy about his new subterranean accommodations. Besides, Maya continued, her voice carrying clearly through the acoustic design meant to broadcast dying screams, you might want to check your own security footage. I never actually surrendered. I raised my hands, yes, but I never spoke the words. Being human culture. We call this strategic misdirection. You might know it better as lying without technically lying. General Kex 9 sputtered. That's semantics. That's tactics, Maya corrected. Your species conquers worlds through superior firepower. Mine survives through superior adaptation. Today the arena was my environment, so I adapted it to suit my needs. Vrak Thul had to admit, grudgingly, that he was impressed. The human had essentially turned their own propaganda event into a demonstration of why invading Earth might be more trouble than it was worth. Brilliant in a completely infuriating way. Sir, whispered an aide who had appeared at his elbow, the betting houses are in complete chaos. They're demanding to know whether to pay out on a human victory or call it a technical disqualification. Victory, Vrak Thul said quietly. The human achieved her objective through combat tactics. But pay the bets. The aide's eyes widened. Sir, that will cost the Empire approximately 40 million credits. The odds were. I know what the odds were. Pay them. Down in the arena, Maya had produced a small device from her pocket and was speaking into it. Maya to command. Phase 1 complete. The big guy is taking an unscheduled basement tour. The crowd has filed their formal complaints with their feet, and I think we've got their attention. A tinny voice responded from the device. Copy that, Maya. How are you feeling about Phase 2? Like a tourist who just realized her guidebook was written by someone with a sense of humor, Maya replied. Proceeding as planned. Vrak-Thul leaned forward. Phase 2? What was Phase 2? His question was answered when Maya pulled out what appeared to be a standard emergency beacon. She held it up so the remaining cameras could get a clear view, then activated it. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished representatives of various other biological configurations, she announced, I'd like to formally request a parley under the Galactic Convention of Armed Conflict, Article 7, Subsection 12. As the sole remaining combatant in this arena, I claim victory by default and invoke the right of the victor to address the governing body of the defeated party. So the convention. Vrak-Thul's blood ran cold. The Zorithian Empire was a signatory to that particular piece of legislation, mainly because they had never imagined a scenario where someone would actually invoke it against them. Furthermore, Maya continued, I'm transmitting the complete tactical analysis of this engagement to every major news network in the galaxy, including several that your empire probably doesn't know exist. General Kex-9 grabbed Vrak-Thul's arm. Sir, she can't do that. The security implications alone. She already did it, Vrak-Thul said, watching the blinking light on Maya's beacon. And technically, she has every legal right to do so under the terms we agreed to when we challenged Earth to this combat. But we never actually challenged Earth. We just grabbed one of their people for entertainment. Which, under galactic law, constitutes an act of war followed by a formal challenge when we placed her in mortal combat. Vrak-Thul felt a headache building behind his eyes. Congratulations, General. We've just accidentally legitimized Earth's claim to protected status under the convention. Maya's beacon suddenly projected a hologram into the air above the arena. The image showed a middle-aged human male in what appeared to be a military uniform, sitting behind a simple desk. Greetings, Supreme Chancellor Vrak-Thul, the hologram said. I am Admiral Marcus Webb, representing the United Earth Defense Coalition. I believe you have something that belongs to us. The remaining spectators, who had been slowly filtering back into their seats out of curiosity, fell silent. This was no longer entertainment. This was diplomacy, and everyone could smell the political implications from several star systems away. Furthermore, Admiral Webb continued, we'd like to discuss the terms under which the Zorithian Empire will be withdrawing its invasion fleet from Earth's solar system. Vrak-Thul's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. We have no invasion fleet in your solar system. Maya looked up at the viewing box and smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Actually, you do. 47 ships, holding position just outside Pluto's orbit. We've been tracking them for 6 months. Impossible. Our stealth technology is obsolete, Maya finished. Your ships are designed to hide from energy-based detection systems. Earth uses gravitational sensors. Every ship with a functional drive creates tiny distortions in local spacetime. We can track a Zorithian destroyer from 3 star systems away. General Kex-9 looked like he was having some kind of medical emergency. She's bluffing. She has to be bluffing. Maya pulled out another device and activated it. Immediately, the arena's display screens lit up with tactical readouts showing the precise positions, headings, and classifications of every ship in the Zorithian fleet. Flagship ZNS Dominator, coordinates 134.7 by 67.2, running silent but leaking plasma from a faulty containment seal in Engine 3. Maya read off casually. Destroyer ZNS Blade Strike, trying to hide behind an asteroid that's actually smaller than the ship itself. And my personal favorite, the Troop Transport ZNS Overwhelming Force, which has been broadcasting its identification signal on an open frequency for the past 2 weeks. The silence in the arena was deafening. Now then, Maya continued, here are Earth's terms. Your fleet withdraws immediately. You release all human citizens currently held in Zorithian custody. And you formally recognize Earth as a sovereign world with full protections under galactic law. And if we refuse? Rakthul managed to ask. Maya's smile widened. Then I press this button. She held up a small red device. And your stealth fleet discovers that Earth has been quietly mining the asteroid belt for the past 50 years. Specifically, we've been attaching small navigational thrusters to approximately 3,000 asteroids and aiming them at the coordinates your ships are currently occupying. The entire arena seemed to sway. Whether from structural damage or collective shock, it was impossible to tell. You're insane, General Kex-9 whispered. No, Maya replied. We're human. There's a difference, though I understand the confusion. From somewhere below, Gorvak's roars had taken on a distinctly plaintive quality, like someone asking to be let out of a basement they had accidentally locked themselves into. Admiral Webb's hologram cleared his throat. Supreme Chancellor, we're prepared to discuss this matter through proper diplomatic channels. However, we do require an immediate response regarding our fleet's withdrawal. Rakthul looked around the arena. Most of the spectators had fled. His champion was stuck in a hole. His secret invasion fleet had been exposed by a species that apparently treated asteroid hurling as a recreational activity. And somehow, one small human had managed to turn his empire's greatest propaganda victory into its most embarrassing defeat. The fleet will withdraw, he said quietly. The crowd, what remained of it, erupted into, well, not cheers exactly. More like the sound of thousands of beings collectively realizing they had just witnessed history being made. Maya deactivated her red button and tucked it away. Excellent. Oh, and one more thing. Mom. What now? Rakthul asked wearily. Your arena has a gift shop, right? I'd like to buy a t-shirt that says I survived the Zorithian gladiatorial arena and all I got was galactic recognition of my species' sovereignty. Do you think they have that in my size? Even General Kex-9 had to laugh at that one. As Maya walked toward the exit, stepping carefully around the hole that had once contained the galaxy's most feared gladiator, she paused and looked back at the viewing box. Oh, and Chancellor? Next time you want to test human resolve, maybe try arm wrestling first. It's less embarrassing for everyone involved. The arena fell silent one final time as Maya Prescott, unremarkable human from an unremarkable planet, walked out of the most remarkable upset in galactic history. 14 seconds. That's how long it had taken for everything to change. And somewhere in the basement, Gorvak was still asking gravity very politely if he could please have his dignity back.